Have you ever wondered who got rich when everyone else lost everything in 2008? Because while millions watched their savings vanish and their homes foreclosed, a small group of ordinary people saw something different. They saw opportunity. These weren't billionaires or Wall Street insiders. They were regular people, a nurse, a teacher, an IT guy, and they multiplied their wealth by 10 times in just 2 years. What did they see that everyone missed? And can you copy their playbook right now before the next crisis? Stay until the end because I'm about to show you exactly what they did and why it still works today. Hit like and subscribe so you don't miss this. To understand why these people got rich, we need to go back to what actually happened in 2008, because this wasn't just a recession, it was a financial tsunami that destroyed everything in its path. It started quietly in 2006. The housing market, which had been climbing for years, began to crack. Then, in 2007, the cracks turned into breaks. Subprime mortgages started defaulting. Banks that had bet everything on real estate suddenly realized their balance sheets were built on sand, and then came September 2008. Lehman Brothers collapsed. The fourth largest investment bank in America simply vanished overnight. Panic spread like wildfire. The S&P 500 plunged 57% from peak to bottom. Unemployment shot up to 10%. Millions of people lost their homes to foreclosure. Trillions of dollars in wealth evaporated. It was like watching the entire financial system try to swallow itself. Everything that looked safe was suddenly underwater. Retirement accounts disappeared. Savings vanished. People who had worked their entire lives to build security watched it all crumble in months. But here's the thing. In that chaos, in that moment, when everyone was selling everything they owned just to survive, something incredible happened. Asset prices hit rock bottom. Bank stocks traded for pennies. Real estate sold for a fraction of what it was worth. Gold and commodities became the only safe haven left. And while most people were thinking, I need to protect what little I have left, a small group saw something different. They saw assets trading at prices that would never happen again in their lifetime. They saw fear so thick that it had blinded everyone to opportunity. Most people ran away, but these few ran toward it, and that's what made all the difference. Let me tell you about Steve. He was 32 years old in 2008. Worked as an IT specialist in Ohio, made about $60,000 a year, nothing special, just a regular guy trying to save for a house and maybe retire someday. When the crash hit, Steve watched his small retirement account drop by 40% in weeks. His friends were panicking. His family told him to pull everything out and put it under the mattress. The news showed people jumping off buildings. It felt like the world was ending, but Steve did something different. He started asking questions. He looked at the banks that were collapsing. Bank of America, Citigroup, JP Morgan. Their stock prices had been destroyed. Bank of America was trading at $3 a share. Before the crisis, it was over 50. Steve asked himself one question. Will the U.S. government let these banks die? He thought about it logically. These banks held millions of customer accounts. They were the backbone of the entire financial system. If they failed, the whole economy would collapse. The government couldn't let that happen. They would have to step in. So in March 2009, when everyone else was still selling in panic, Steve took $50,000, everything he had saved, and he bought Bank of America stock at $3.12 per share. His wife thought he'd lost his mind. His co-workers said he was gambling with his future. But Steve wasn't gambling. He was calculating. He understood something that most people missed. These banks were too big to fail. The government bailout was coming. It was just a matter of time. Fast forward to 2011. Bank of America stock hit $30. Steve sold. His $50,000 turned into almost $500,000 in 2 years. But here's what's important. Steve didn't get rich because he was lucky. He got rich because he understood one thing. Fear creates opportunity. When everyone is running away, that's when assets become cheap. And cheap assets owned by institutions the government won't let die are the safest bet you can make. That was playbook number one. Buy what everyone fears. If you know it won't disappear. If you're finding this valuable, drop a like, because I've got 2 more stories coming right now. While Steve was playing the stock market, Maria took a completely different path, and her strategy was just as bold. Maria was a nurse in Toronto, 41 years old, single mom with 2 kids. She made decent money, but nothing extraordinary, around 70,000 Canadian a year. She'd always dreamed of owning investment property, but could never afford it. Then 2008 happened, and suddenly the dream didn't just become possible, it became obvious. Here's what Maria saw. The foreclosure market in the United States had exploded. Millions of homes were being seized by banks. People who couldn't pay their mortgages were being kicked out. And those homes were sitting empty, rotting, waiting for someone to buy them, but nobody wanted them. Everyone thought real estate was dead. Prices would keep falling forever. Why catch a falling knife? Maria thought differently. She looked at cities like Las Vegas, Phoenix, Miami, places where real estate had been completely destroyed. Houses that sold for $300,000 in 2006 were now going for $80,000, some even less. She asked herself the same question Steve asked. Will these assets go to zero? Can a house in Las Vegas really be worth nothing? The answer was no. People will always need homes. The population isn't shrinking. Once the panic ends, demand will come back. It's just a matter of time. So Maria did something terrifying. She took out a $200,000 loan. She flew to Las Vegas and she bought 3 foreclosure properties, $80,000 each, houses that had been worth nearly $1 million combined just 2 years earlier. Her family thought she was insane, borrowing that much money to buy houses in a dead market, in a foreign country. It was financial suicide, but Maria had done her research. She knew these homes were in decent neighborhoods. They just needed basic repairs. She spent $20,000 fixing them up. Then she rented them out. The rental income covered her loan payments and gave her a small profit each month. Then she waited. 2009, 2010, 2011. The market stayed flat. People kept saying real estate would never recover. But in 2014, something shifted. The economy stabilized. People started buying again. Maria's 3 properties, which she bought for $80,000 each, were now worth $220,000 each. She sold all 3. Her total return? Over $450,000. After paying back the loan and expenses, she walked away with more than $200,000 in profit. Maria told me later, everyone thought I was crazy, but I knew one thing. House prices can't go to zero. People need shelter. It's not a luxury. It's a necessity. All I had to do was wait for fear to turn into logic. That's playbook number 2. Buy when blood is in the streets, especially in assets people need. Now, the third story is completely different because James didn't buy stocks. He didn't buy real estate. He bought gold. James was a high school teacher in Sydney, 38 years old, taught economics, which gave him a unique perspective. He wasn't a trader, wasn't a finance guy, but he understood how money worked at a fundamental level. In late 2008 and early 2009, James watched something that terrified him. The U.S. Federal Reserve started printing money like never before. Quantitative easing, they called it stimulus. But James knew what it really meant. When you flood the system with newly created money, one of 2 things happens. Either the economy absorbs it and grows, or the value of the currency itself starts to erode. And if trust in the currency breaks, people run to hard assets, things that can't be printed, things that hold value no matter what governments do, gold, silver, commodities. James looked at gold prices in early 2009, $800 per ounce. It had already risen from below $300 just a few years earlier, but James believed it was just getting started. He took 30,000 Australian dollars, his entire savings, and he bought gold at $800 an ounce. His friends thought he was paranoid. Gold is for doomsday preppers, they said. The economy will recover. You're wasting your money. But James wasn't betting on doomsday. He was betting on simple economics. If central banks print trillions of dollars, that money has to go somewhere. And when people lose faith in paper currency, they buy things that are real. He was right. By 2011, gold hit $1,800 per ounce. James sold. His $30,000 turned into $67,000. More than double in less than 3 years, but James didn't stop there. He also bought silver at $14 an ounce, sold at $48. He bought platinum. He even invested in agricultural commodities, wheat and corn futures, betting that inflation would push food prices higher. Every single bet paid off. By 2012, James had turned his 30,000 into over 150,000. When I asked him how he knew, he said this: "I didn't know, but I understood the pattern. When governments get desperate, they print. When they print, real assets rise. It's not magic, it's history. And history always repeats when the stakes are high enough." That's playbook number 3. When governments print money, hard assets become king. So what do Steve, Maria, and James have in common? Because if you look closely, these 3 people follow the exact same playbook. They just applied it to different assets. First, they all acted when everyone else was paralyzed by fear. This is the contrarian mindset. When the world is screaming that everything is falling apart, most people freeze. They sell. They panic. They protect what little they have left. But Steve, Maria, and James did the opposite. They saw fear as a signal, not a warning. They understood that maximum fear equals maximum opportunity. Second, they all bought assets that were massively undervalued because of panic selling. Bank stocks trading at $3, houses selling for $80,000, gold at $800 an ounce. These weren't bad assets. They were good assets that had been destroyed by emotion. The fundamentals were still there. The value was still there, but nobody could see it through the fear. Third, they all had a long time horizon. None of them expected to get rich in a month. Steve held for 2 years, Maria held for 5, James held for 3. They understood that recovery takes time, that markets don't snap back overnight. They were willing to wait while everyone else was desperate for instant safety. Fourth, they all understood how governments would respond. Steve knew the banks were too big to fail. Maria knew the government wouldn't let housing collapse forever. James knew central banks would print money to stabilize the system. They didn't just bet on assets, they bet on the inevitable government response to crisis. And fifth, they all took calculated risks. Steve didn't put his money in one bank. Maria bought 3 properties, not one. James diversified across gold, silver, platinum, and commodities. They spread their bets. They managed downside. They didn't gamble. They calculated. Meanwhile, the average investor did the exact opposite. They sold at the bottom. They stayed in cash for years. They waited until everything recovered, then bought back in at higher prices. They let fear win. That's the difference. Steve, Maria, and James didn't get lucky. They followed a strategy that works every single time there's a crisis. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but that was 2008. The world is different now. We have new technology, new systems, new risks, and you're absolutely right. Some things are different. We have cryptocurrency now, an entire asset class that didn't exist in 2008. We have artificial intelligence reshaping industries overnight. Markets are more global, more interconnected, more driven by algorithms than ever before. Central banks have learned from their mistakes and developed new policy tools. The geopolitical landscape has shifted. China's rise, Europe's struggles, climate risks, ESG investing. The financial system today is objectively more complex than it was 16 years ago. More moving parts, more unknowns, more potential for cascading failures. But here's the truth. The one thing that hasn't changed is human psychology, greed and fear, panic and euphoria, the desperate need to believe that this time is different. These forces don't evolve. They're hardwired into every generation. They just show up wearing new clothes. In 1929, people genuinely believed technology had made crashes impossible. The radio, the automobile, electricity, these were real innovations. And people said old rules don't apply. This boom lasts forever. This time is different. Then October came, and it wasn't. In 2000, it was the internet. People said information flows instantly now. Efficiency is maximized. Profit doesn't matter. Just growth. This time is different. Then March 2000 arrived. The NASDAQ crashed, and it wasn't different. In 2006, it was housing. Prices only go up. We learned from bubbles. We have better regulation. Subprime is contained. This time is different. Then 2008 happened, and once again it wasn't. Today, the story is AI and central bank mastery. We have better data, better models. Crashes like 2008 can't happen because we're smarter now. This time is different. Sound familiar? But you know what never changes? The playbook of people who get rich during crashes. Buy when there's maximum fear. Understand how governments respond. Have patience for years, not months. Diversify intelligently. Stay rational when everyone else loses their mind. That strategy worked in 1929. It worked in 2000. It worked in 2008. And it will work in the next crisis. So the question isn't if another crash will come. It will. The question is, when it does, will you be ready? Will you be like Steve, Maria, and James? Or will you freeze, panic, and miss the opportunity? So let me give you the actual playbook, the steps you can take right now to prepare. This isn't financial advice. I'm not telling you what to buy, but I am giving you a framework for how to think. Step 1, build your watch list. Start identifying the types of assets that typically get sold off during a panic. Bank stocks, real estate investment trusts, blue chip companies with strong fundamentals but cyclical business models, commodities like gold and silver, even certain sectors like energy or utilities that people need regardless of the economy. Write them down, track their prices, understand what they're worth when times are good. So when times get bad and prices crash, you'll know what's actually cheap and what's just broken. Step 2, understand government response. This is critical. When a crisis hits, governments don't just sit there. They act. They bail out banks. They cut interest rates. They print money through quantitative easing. They pass stimulus packages. Study what happened in 2008. The Fed dropped rates to zero. They injected trillions into the system. They guaranteed bank deposits. They made it clear that major institutions wouldn't be allowed to fail. The next time a crisis comes, ask yourself, what will governments do? Which assets will they protect? Which sectors will they support? Because those are your safest bets. Step 3, have dry powder. This means keeping cash or liquid assets ready to deploy. You can't buy the dip if all your money is already invested. Most people are fully invested when markets are high. Then when the crash comes, they have nothing left to buy with. Keep some percentage of your portfolio in cash or cash equivalents, 10%, 20%, whatever feels right for your situation. So when fear peaks and prices crater, you have the ammunition to act. Step 4, think in years, not months. This is where most people fail. They see a crash, they buy something, and 3 months later, when it hasn't recovered, they panic and sell at a loss. Steve held for 2 years. Maria held for 5. James held for 3. Recovery doesn't happen overnight. You need patience. You need conviction. You need to be okay with watching your investment sit there doing nothing for months or even years before it finally moves. If you can't handle that, don't play this game. Step 5, don't try to catch the falling knife. This is a classic mistake. People see a stock drop from 50 to 30 and think, that's cheap, I'll buy. Then it drops to 20, then 15, then 10. Wait for signs of stabilization. Wait for the bleeding to slow. You don't need to buy at the absolute bottom. You just need to buy when the worst is clearly over and recovery is beginning. And step 6, diversify your bets. Don't go all in on one stock, one property, one asset. Spread your risk. If you're buying stocks, buy several. If you're buying real estate, buy in different markets. If you're buying gold, also consider silver or other hard assets. No one knows which specific bet will pay off the most, but if you spread intelligently, your winners will more than cover your losers. So here's what you can do right now, today. Research. Build that watch list. Read about what happened in 2008. Study the people who got rich. Learn from history, because the next crisis might not happen tomorrow. It might not happen this year, but it will happen. And when it does, the people who prepared will be the ones who profit. Opportunity doesn't come to those who wait. It comes to those who prepare. Steve, Maria, and James weren't superheroes. They weren't geniuses. They were ordinary people who made one critical choice. When the world was running away, they ran toward the opportunity. And that's the lesson here. Crises aren't just disasters, they're resets. They're moments when assets get repriced, when fear overwhelms logic, when the transfer of wealth happens from the panicked to the prepared. The next time a crash comes, and it will come, remember this. It's not the time to freeze. It's not the time to hide. It's the time to think clearly, to act deliberately, to be ready. Because while most people see collapse, a few will see foundation. While most see loss, a few will see opportunity. And those few will be the ones who come out stronger on the other side. History doesn't repeat itself exactly, but it rhymes. And those who study the rhyme get rich. So if this video gave you value, smash that subscribe button, hit like, and comment below. Tell me, what would you do if a crash happened right now? What's on your watch list? Let's talk about it. Just a reminder, I'm not a financial advisor. This video is for educational purposes only. Any investment decisions you make are your own responsibility. Do your research, think critically, and never invest money you can't afford to lose. See you in the next one.